time for Ask the Mayor on KWBE with Beatrice Mayor Stan Worth. Good morning, Stan.
Good morning, Douglas.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice fall weather, and boy, the jackets are coming out. I feel like I got a golf shirt on here. Something's wrong with me. I don't know, but still pretty mild today, but some cooler weather on the way, but kind of like it.
First frost tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Something like that.
32,
yeah.
so
yeah.
wow, that'd be a little frigid on Saturday morning, I would imagine. Going to talk about several things today on the Ask the Mayor program, some of the things that took place Monday night at the city council meeting. One is I can't remember if you made use of these programs before or not, but Rural Economic Development Loan Program to help out Beatrice Community Hospital with some technology. Is that the first time?
It's the first time. It's a USDA Rural Development Grant. And so the electric department and how they come up with this scheme, I'm not quite sure, is eligible for the grant. And the actual grant was $300,000, but required a 20% match from the city. So we, through the electric department, injected $60,000. Once the city receives the money, then we will loan it out to Beatrice Community Hospital, and they're going to use it for some monitoring equipment. That monitoring equipment costs in the neighborhood of $498,000. They can start repaying that loan back to the city within 1 year. They can pay it all off at the end of that 1 year period of time. Should that occur, then those dollars will be utilized, all $360,000 of it will be utilized for a revolving loan fund to help businesses, similar to what we utilize the LB 840 dollars for.
Does that have to be a separate fund, or can you include that in your LB 840?
We actually are going to use that as a separate fund. I think you need to keep those dollars separate just for consistency, as far as trying to track those dollars and just making sure that there's a good audit trail.
Not every community has sources like that where you can loan out to economic development projects, so it's kind of a big benefit.
It's a huge benefit, and Doug, once that is repaid and once we put those dollars into motion, then we're eligible for reapplying for an additional grant. And once that should we receive that additional grant, then it more than likely will be commingled into that same fund because they're like dollars. And so it is a good benefit to the city and a real benefit to businesses who are in need of some additional dollars.
The connection with the electric department, I guess one tie you could say, too, is that I'm sure the hospital is a big electric user, so
that's exactly right.
You're getting money back too through their operation that way.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so we're really pleased to be able to partner with the community hospital. They're making great strides out there. Obviously, you see the construction that's going on out there, and some additional monitoring equipment is going to help them with the services that they provide, and so it's a good public-private partnership.
Their expansion to the north there, I hadn't driven out there just recently, but it kind of looks like things are getting enclosed, and things are ready to go to the inside just in time for
the snow to fly.
So, who would have thought, though, after that hospital was built, level of expansion that has already taken place?
It's amazing, and I think that incorporating the doctors under one, having everybody under one umbrella really is a benefit. They listened to the general public and said you need some additional parking and additional parking closer, and they certainly did that and satisfied that need. And simply because you've got family practitioners that are under one roof, and obviously they can park closer and make it a little more convenient.
Also on Monday night, a final downtown redevelopment loan under the most recent grant that you had received. This is pretty much the last one?
It is the last one. Okay. Then this is a company called DRS Properties and Investments. The individual's name is Robert Taylor. It was for $10,000. And this is property on South 5th Street, 117 South 5th Street. And then the other property is 123 South 5th Street. So that individual bought these two buildings. Both buildings were in need of some upgrades and updates, and so these dollars will be utilized for that. I think he's going to put in a new HVAC system in one of the buildings, and then do some removal of wood paneling and siding on one of the other buildings and kind of doll it up a little bit.
As these projects have continued and you see remodeling of either the facades or some other work associated with them, you've gone this route a couple of times now on downtown redevelopment loans. Is there a possibility of a third somewhere down there?
We've actually applied for another.
I see.
Now, odds are it probably won't get approved, only because there's other communities doing the same thing. But there's different standards for different grant applications as you go through the processes. And it's kind of like a report card. If you can match whatever that report card is asking or requiring, then you're going to score higher than other communities. And we hope other communities are doing the very same thing, but we hope we score better.
Yeah, it's always competitive. There's other people out there that are trying to do similar things.
Always is.
Before I take a quick break here, maybe just kind of a quick update on, you have the Lincoln Corridor project. That study is still out there, and what to do from, 5th Street all the way out to about 25th, 26th in that area.
The final study is done, and at some point in time, we'll take that back to the public just to show them what the proposal is. But we're right at this point still waiting to figure out kind of how the school wants to configure some things before we actually complete the project.
So it's been kind of tough going through those negotiations, because there's some improvements that do cost a lot of money with Lincoln, and then 33rd, and of course the school project's going great guns for the preparation of the site and everything. And
I don't know that you would classify it as tough negotiations. I think it is something where you have to have give and take on both sides, and there is going to be some compromises. And that development that's going on East Lincoln Street is going to be outstanding for the community, outstanding for District 15. But it all costs dollars, just like you said. And so we have to determine how we're going to pay for it. Is it going to be a cost share between the two entities? That would be my hope, is that we can get to that conclusion. And that's what we're striving for.
I did not get to go to their groundbreaking because I was on vacation last week, but got the kids involved in it. I guess it was a pretty nice little celebration.
It really was. I mean, all the kids were dressed up in safety jackets, safety vests, and they all had the yellow hard hats on. Obviously, there were plastic hard hats with the Orangeman logo on it. And all of them had a shovel in their hand, and all of them got to play in the dirt.
Wow. Probably the world's biggest sandbox for a little while there as they went through that celebration.
It was a celebration, and that celebratory event really signifies good news for our community, just to replace some buildings that were built in the 1950s that served their purpose very well, but have become outdated over the last several years, and this will be a great addition to our community.
In addition to, higher quality educational facilities, you would think a lot of cost savings, because you don't have to maintain 4 other buildings that, like you said, were built long ago, and just the long-term savings, which is often kind of hard for people to see, but that should show up.
Well, maintenance on an old building, and believe me, I was at an old building for 46 years, and I know how expensive maintenance is on some of those outdated buildings. It just becomes enormous. The other side of this is that this is an attraction to young families to our community. Young families who are maybe looking for work here, and if they're looking for work here, they're going to, first of all, investigate what the churches are, some of the other amenities, the trail system, the park system, and the school system. If you have a good elementary school, young families will tend to be drawn to that. And so it is an economic development driver also.
If I were to hazard a guess, it's probably at the top of the list or very near to it when they start looking at a community. So.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. 8:40 is our time on Ask the Mayor. We'll have more with Mayor Stan Worth in just a moment. We're back on Ask the Mayor with Beatrice Mayor Stan Worth today. And one of the things we were talking about before the break was just kind of a quick update on the Lincoln Corridor project. Now you'll have a study for Court Street corridor
Again.
and what to do. Yep. And I know several years back you had the study from RDG, which took public input, made some recommendations. There was the discussion about maybe moving the highway south to Market Street to get that through traffic through and, calm things down pedestrian-wise. Is that kind of one of the focuses?
It is.
again?
That's gained quite a bit of traction again. And back in 2011, the Downtown Revitalization Plan prepared by RDG, which was a company out of Omaha, proposed to reroute the highway at that time. And the master plan also indicates that we reroute the traffic. So finally it takes us, I don't know how many times to figure out, maybe they think that would be a good thing for our community. And so we're going to hire Olson and Associates to determine the feasibility and the expected cost of moving the highway. I think back in 2013, 14, something like that, it was like $5 million times money, and so that's probably doubled in cost since that period of time. But I think understanding moving the highway is just part of the project. They would kind of conduct a master plan, and that master plan would also include some of the amenities that you would see along Court Street once the traffic is gone, whether there would be bump outs, whether there would be some plantings that would take place, anything that would make it a little more pedestrian user friendly, because it is not pedestrian user friendly today, because it is a U.S. highway, and there is a boatload of traffic that goes down there every day.
Yeah.
And so this would, the configuration would assist in making that just a little more efficient and easier to, I guess, navigate if you're a pedestrian.
Back in when RDG did that study, if I recall correctly, on the west end of the downtown district, seems like the cutoff point to redirect it would have been at about 2nd Street.
2nd Street.
And then on the east end, right at about 8th, if I remember
correct.
right. Is that kind of what you might be looking at?
I think that's
again?
still the scope
Yeah.
of work that they're going to look at is between 2nd and 8th Street. We will receive, or we will have two public hearings to receive public input and feedback on what improvements the general public would like to see on Court Street once the highway is removed. Now, we're not removing the highway, we're just rerouting the highway, and the plan would also update any cost estimates. I think I mentioned that earlier, any cost estimates of what they think this would cost us.
Now, the next question somebody might ask is, well, you have a north-south highway going right through the middle of the downtown, too. Is that basically just would kind of stay the same? I mean, there's not much you can do because you don't have as much depth distance-wise.
I think that would be a
downtown.
little more difficult of a task.
Yeah.
But how much of a more difficult task that is, I can't tell you that. I'm not an engineer. But I think this is one step. The subject was broached years ago, and I think since it has resurfaced numerous times, I think it is something that we need to really look seriously at. State Department of Transportation is definitely in favor of us doing this. We have representatives that are part of this district that Beatrice is included in, and they're 100% behind this. Now, are there state dollars to assist us with this? Some, but certainly not nearly enough to satisfy the project cost.
How might, if at all, OneWays work into this? I know you've had at least one council member say he'd like to take a look at, let's kind of do away with the OneWays and start making it two-way travel in the downtown.
So that's being looked at right now. The Traffic Committee has, I think, kind of made their determination and suggestions on what they would like to see, and there are a few one-way streets that I think you'll see in the very near future removed. Do we need them? They've served the community well. They're confusing, especially if you're from out of town. And I think 7th and 8th Street are two streets that are being looked at really hard right now.
You know, it wasn't all that long ago, and I was, it was mentioned at a council meeting recently about stoplights, too. You've had a couple taken out, and, there was probably a thought process at that time, oh, no, there's going to be all kinds of wrecks, but it's been kind of seamless. I mean, you don't even remember where they're at half the time.
Yeah. I think there was one at Fifth and Ella. There was there was a stoplight there. Took that out, and it's really not a big deal at all. Matter of fact, you'd have to go back in your memory bank just a little bit to even remember what it even looked like.
Yeah.
I think there's some criticism about stoplights along Court Street. We've actually, the engineering department has looked at this a little bit, and there's instances where you're going to have to replace it with something.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't want to do four-way stops. That's counterproductive. Whether or not those are going to be removed remains to be seen. Again, state highways, they have some input into, the Department of Transportation has some input as to what we can and can't do.
The common thinking for some may be that stoplights and stop signs prevent accidents, but I remember former police chief Lang telling me that it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
You end up having more wrecks sometimes in situations
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
people are a little more cautious when they, first of all, enter an intersection that maybe has a four-way stop or just a two-way stop. I think people are just a little more cautious, and I think that's the reason. And even stop signs, if you have stop signs, it moves traffic faster than stoplights does.
Yeah. Okay.
One other thing on that
Sure.
Study that Olson's going to do, there will be, maybe I mentioned this, a couple of public hearings. I think we're going to hold those public hearings after the holidays.
Okay. All right. Is there a community in the area where, as far as being pedestrian friendly, that you can kind of look toward as a potential example about how Court Street might look if you did get the through traffic off of it and you rerouted it to the
One comes
south?
to mind because I'm familiar with it is North Platte. They have a downtown that has bump outs and very limited parking along that particular street, even though it seems to be adequate. You see people walking all over the place, and they're walking down the middle of the street just because they know it's a lot safer, and that's one that comes to mind. I think I'm thinking of Kearney, but I can't right now place that.
Yeah. And if they're walking downtown, probably likely to spend a little bit more time in the downtown.
That's what we would hope.
Yeah, okay. We'll be back with more on Ask the Mayor to wrap up our program with Mayor Stan Wirth in just a moment. 8:53 our time on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Stan Wirth. I have a few more topics to touch on today. One is agreement between the city and Pinpoint Communications partnership. I think a Cambridge-based firm about building up infrastructure for better internet service.
Last June, we signed an agreement with Pinpoint. It was a memorandum of understanding to explore the possibility of expanding internet connectivity fiber services in Beatrice. And through those discussions, we entered a public-private partnership agreement with Pinpoint to construct an all-fiber network to all businesses and residential properties in Beatrice. They will supply fiber connectivity to all of the city-owned facilities also, which will be huge. And it's not just to the city auditorium and the administration office, but it's to our lift stations and some of the other generators that we have, so we can have instant access to maybe problems that could occur, maintenance that needs to be done, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a pretty neat deal. It calls for the parties to negotiate and enter into a franchise agreement and network and right-of-way infrastructure lease agreements within the next, I think, 120 calendar days. So that process is started. Don't expect it overnight, but it is a step forward and a step in the right direction.
Once the work would get underway, how long of a process might it be?
We kind of broached that subject and really didn't get a definitive answer on how long it would take. It just depends on all of the other studies that have to be done, if they're going underground, if they're going to hang them on poles. there is more than likely there's going to be a combination of both. Now, the city owns some of the poles, Windstream owns some of the poles, so there would be negotiations back and forth between the city and Windstream and Pinpoint. If they go underground, obviously you need to make sure that you're not going to run into anything like electrical lines that were buried underground or any other what am I trying to say?
Utility lines.
Other utility
or
lines that are underneath.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were there other providers that were considered or offered, or just nobody was as interested in it?
We have talked with numerous providers over the years, and nothing ever came to be. And so Pinpoint actually came to us, and they have offered the same services and provided the same services in Nebraska City and Auburn, and there's a couple of other communities that I think Syracuse was another one where they provided services. But they have also been active in larger cities like Denver and Chicago. So they know what they're doing. They are doing this on their own dime. We're not going to have to come up with any funding for this project. So it's going to happen, and we're pretty excited about it.
New bridge rails going in on the South 6th Street River Bridge. You go by there every day, many times, I'm sure. How's it going?
Looks really good.
Yeah.
I think it's going a little slower than what they anticipated because those old rails have been there a long, long time. And rust is stronger than super glue, and so it's hard to
It's
get.
not a duct tape job or anything like that.
It's hard to get some of the railings off just because some of the bolts are so rusted. They're using impact wrenches, but they can only use impact wrenches so much before they have to rely on a sledgehammer to assist them. You always go to the hammer. Sometimes that works a lot better. They figure 2.5 weeks for the total project to be completed. I think they have maybe 4 or 5 panels on the east side of the bridge completed. And when you see the new versus what was there,
Quite a change.
It's amazing.
You know, I walked it on the west side walkway of the bridge and just kind of looking what was going on the other day. And as you're driving it, you don't think much about it, but that's a long span. There's a lot of rails to remove there.
There is.
And so it will take a little bit more time than the West Court Street one did. Kind of a short span there.
But once it's completed, I think it will be a really nice improvement and just offers a more beautified gateway into our community.
One of the difficulties on the West Court one is everybody didn't like the concrete barriers there but on the South 6th one, they're a little bit lower. They're not quite as, you see the railing more as you go across there. So.
And that won't be a distracting factor. On West Court Street, we're actually working with a contractor locally and also with the Department of Transportation on a surface that we can actually put on those to make them look quite a bit better than what they are today. The cost is going to be in that $75,000 range to do it. That's at least one estimate that we've received. But we've, I think, received enough criticism over it, even though we have nothing to do with it. We received quite a bit of criticism over the way that looks versus the railing. And so we're going to investigate it further and possibly do something about it.
One project that's been kind of going on, I think they held a work day at it last weekend, and that is the lower level of the Beatrice City Auditorium where the fire department used to be located is going to be become a home for the community food pantry there eventually. What's kind of the update on that? I hadn't heard if there was much work that's been done so far.
It's really not at that completed stage yet as far as what the plan is actually going to look like. I think they have done their measurements, and I'm talking about the food pantry folks, have done their measurements along with their architect and determined that they need just a little extra space. And so we're working through that process to see if that extra space is going to impede some of the things that the city wants to do. I know our Public Properties Department is utilizing a portion of that building, and some additional space that they need may interfere with what he's trying to do, but we'll come to some agreement, some conclusion.
All right, Mayor, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks, Doug.